Good morning. You know, I think we're at a very important transition now. As you know, we've put the Easter season behind us. We had the 3 big feasts. Now we've returned to ordinary time, and we're going to pick up following the Gospel of Mark again for the next few weeks. It's very important that we keep things in context, especially so that we can appreciate what's actually going on in the whole dynamic of the Gospel. Interestingly enough, it was perfect timing. If you're following the Bible in a Year with Father Mike, he just finished the Gospel of Mark this morning. So this past week, I've been listening to the Gospel of Mark, and I heard the whole thing. And I highly recommend that now that we're returning to the Gospel, maybe read through the whole Gospel again. It's always important, I believe, for you and for me to always keep things in context. Mark has a very unique way of presenting the Gospel story, most likely through the eyes of St. Peter. And so he has a short gospel. He has a very fast-paced gospel. As Father Mike points out, they use the word immediately over and over and over again. Immediately this happened, and immediately that happened, and immediately there's like 32 times in 16 chapters he uses the word immediately. So there's a character to the gospel, and I hope we can all appreciate it. But for the next few weeks, I would like to focus on the phrase, get used to different. Get used to different. That's a line actually from The Chosen in season 1. And it's the character who plays Jesus, he's called Matthew, the tax collector. And St. Peter, or at the time he's still Simon, gets all like worked up and says, whoa, hold on. Do you have any clue who this guy is? There's no way you want him as one of your disciples. And Jesus just kind of smiles and says, no, Peter, it's different. Get used to different. And I think it's an important thing because I think what Jesus is doing there, at least in this artistic way, is pointing out that we are the ones who have to get used to our being a little different. See, as Catholics, a lot of times, we don't like doing that. But sometimes we might have to change our perspective. Jesus is clearly saying to Simon, it's going to be different. Even sinners and tax collectors are going to be called. Get used to different. In Mark's gospel right now, what just happened, right before this passage, Mark gives us the list of the 12 disciples. Now Jesus has finished collecting his disciples. He's coming back to his hometown. All the miracles and things that he's done so far that has garnered a lot of attention is now bearing a little bit of fruit. As you heard in the beginning of the story, there was a huge crowd that showed up to the point where they couldn't even sit down and eat. And then his family shows up, members of his family. And what are they doing? They're trying to get to him because this big, huge crowd, they project onto him that he must be crazy because nobody in a Roman-occupied territory would draw a crowd. That's crazy. He must be insane. Let's just go save him from himself because look at him. He must be crazy. And then the scribes. There's a thing that we do. We human beings have done this since the beginning of time. Take any Psych 101 course, and they talk about certain defense mechanisms that we have. Basically, these things that we do to kind of protect the ego, to try to protect our life and who we are and the way we are. And even though sometimes whatever that is probably needs to change and probably is a problem and other things, we still kind of make ways, we still find ways to protect that. And to allow it to keep happening and keep happening. I mean, look at anybody who's ever suffered an addiction. They keep doing it and keep doing it because they keep making excuses as to why they shouldn't stop. Look at some of the things that we see human beings doing. Projection. Sometimes we project or we blame. Blame is a big one. We love to blame everybody else for our problems. And you saw it in the first reading. Clear as day, there's Adam hiding from God. I thought that was kind of cute. Hiding from God, thinking he's going to get away with this. Hiding, and what does he do? God says, who told you were naked? Well, you must have eaten the fruit. Now, what is Adam's reaction? It sounds like he goes, well, I'm sorry, God, I made a mistake. She made me do it. It's her fault. I had nothing to do with it. It's her fault. Says to the woman, why did you do that? Well, the serpent made me do it. Look, we human beings, we blame. We take it off of ourselves and throw it onto somebody else. And that kind of protection, if you will, that ego protection, if you will, is a dangerous thing at times. Sometimes it's healthy, but many times it prevents us from understanding reality as ordained by God. We have to appreciate reality as created and ordained by God. And God gave Adam and Eve very specific. This is the reality. This is what it's supposed to be. Don't violate this, because when you cross that, something's going to go wrong. And a dissonance happens inside of us when something goes wrong. When we've crossed a line, we know it. Conscience kicks in. We feel that kind of guilt within. We feel that dissonance inside of us, that sense inside of us that something is awry and something needs to change, and I've got to be a little different. And that's what's going on. Look at the scribes. The scribes, I'm sure as soon as those words finished rolling off their lips, they knew, oh, that was pretty dumb. That Satan is casting out Satan? Come on. Even Jesus, using logic, comes right back at them and saying, hold on a second. You really trying to tell me that you think that that's going to work? Listen to yourselves. Anything that's divided like that is doomed to failure. Inside of us, that whole psychological process, whatever our family of origin, whatever things that we've suffered in life, with all the different things that are going on, a lot of times that dissonance is in there, that division is within us. And Jesus is saying, no, that cannot stand. That is destructive. Look at the amount of mental illness that's out there today, of people who are not being open to God, who are not being fair to themselves, who are not allowing the Word of God into their souls and into their hearts. So many people suffer at their own hands because of that voice that's within them, that dissonance that's within them, that illogic that's within them, because reality is created by God. And if we go against what's real, it's going to hurt us. Now, I want you to stay with that for a second, because we have to get used to different. First, we have to be a little different. We have to open our hearts. We have to open our souls. We have to open our... That's what St. Paul is going on about in the reading today. There's a spiritual priority. We ought to be people who are destined for eternity, going to God day after day, allowing the spiritual to take priority. And yet for many of us, we're still trying to protect that status quo of our lives. We just want to have that quiet little thing, just be able to pull away from everything and to even pull it away from God. Get used to different. Things are going to have to change, my dear brothers and sisters. And there's certain things that cannot change. There's certain things that should never change. It's called the truth. It's called the reality as God ordained it. What changed in Adam and Eve was not God and not what God created. It was Adam and Eve who changed. And God says to them, no. I need you to come back. I need you to appreciate. I need you to now understand who you really are. For you and for me, the same. We have to be believers. We have to be followers of Jesus Christ. And to be a follower of Jesus Christ, as we're going to see in the gospel, especially as it unfolds, Jesus is going to try to push his disciples to understand things are different. When Simon is going after poor St. Matthew, he's looking at him saying, he's such a horrible man. And Jesus is saying, whoa. I didn't come for condemnation. I came for mercy. He didn't come to condemn. He came for mercy. I got to be clear about that. Doesn't mean that it's a slam dunk, you automatically get it. But we have to be like Matthew. Yes, Lord, I will follow. I will turn away. He gave up everything. He gave up a prestigious job. He gave up all his money. He gave up his comfortable house to follow Jesus because of his mercy. And it's interesting, as you watch the series unfold, in the artistic way that they're presenting it, Matthew is probably one of those figures that really represents who Jesus came for. Because he's the one that starts to show mercy to others, first reconciling with his family and then eventually reconciling with some of the other disciples. He came for mercy. And yet here we are sometimes trying to protect our own little status quo. We want to make things in our own image and likeness. We want things to happen a certain way based on how I want it to look, which is like the scribes. You're casting out demons as a demon yourself. No, that doesn't make any sense. All of us need to have a certain openness. You know, in Catholic circles, I have to say in Catholic circles, the line that I've probably heard the most in my years of priesthood is, we've always done it that way. We've always done it that way. You know, people say it all the time. Why are we doing this way? Well, we've always done it that way. But it's not doing anything. It's not helping anything. It used to work. but it's really not working anymore. Maybe it's time that we look at this from a fresh perspective and come to it from a different way. I mean, I've had groups that have, they want to recruit for members, and they're doing the same thing that they've done for the last 50 years, and they're not getting any new members. And I say, well, maybe you should start recruiting in a different way. Maybe find another avenue to reach out to people or to present your organization. Get used to different. We have to evaluate consistently. What happened in Jesus' time, they were so fixed in their views, they were so in their status quo, they were so tight in that when something different did come along and it upset their apple cart, the dissonance got louder. And what did they try to do? They blamed. They're going to blame Jesus for their mistakes. They're going to scapegoat Jesus because of their sin. And we do the same thing a lot of times. And that's why, as a people, we have to open our hearts. We have to open our souls. We can't always just keep, if something is working, leave it alone. But if something's not working, review it, change it. It's okay. Like I said, there are things we can't mess with. There are things that we can't change. The mass is the mass. It's always going to be the mass. This was given to us by God. We do it this way, period. That's not a negotiable. But the way we treat one another, the way we act with one another, the way we live out our faith with one another, that sometimes needs to be looked at. One of the things that I think we need to get used to is that we need each other. Jesus didn't leave us, a bunch of individuals to do our own little thing. You're not here as a bunch of little individuals. No way. If you think you're here just for you, we got to talk. We got to talk. We're here to become brothers and sisters in one family in Christ. Jesus just made it clear. Who are my mother and brother and sisters? Those who do the will of God. And if we've stopped doing the will of God, like the scribes, we're going to have this dissonance within us because we know that we're not conforming to the reality that God has given us. It's there. It's obvious to us. It's evident. What is the truth and the goodness and the beauty that Jesus has revealed? And what does he ask? He asks us to live that reality. And when we don't, we feel that twinge inside of us. Something is wrong here. Something's awry. Maybe I got to be a little different. Maybe I got to start looking at the people around me a little bit differently. Small Christian communities are so important, and we really need to recapture some of that in our church. We could start doing that by certainly assembling here on Sundays, but maybe doing some of the gatherings during the week. So many of you don't show up to certain things. We have the Chosen on Tuesday nights. It's going to be a fantastic thing to fellowship with each other, to be challenged by a great work of art, and then have that opportunity to mutually share faith with one another. Simple. It's that simple. That opens us up. That allows us to see things in a different way. Get used to different. I like the title a lot only because we Catholics, we're into comfortable Catholicism. We don't want anything to change. We don't want anything to be different. We don't want anything, and we want to blame everybody else if there's a problem. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I hope you want to be part of the solution as well. Listening to Jesus in the coming chapters of St. Mark, you're going to hear a lot of that. He's going to be pushing us to be different. He's going to be asking us to open our souls and open our minds. He's going to be asking us to say, not only I've made a mistake, but I want to do something about it. Not only do I have a propensity to keep doing this thing, but I want to change it. And we got to talk more and more about that kind of change, that kind of different that we need to be. And I think this is a good time to challenge ourselves to be different. To be different in a world that needs us to go out there and share the good news. To be different in a world that's so divided and so falling apart. And we should be the glue, the Christians, bringing God's mercy to those who are not here. Showing God's mercy to the St. Matthews out there. Being open to forgiveness that God gives us and that we can share with one another. And so, in the coming weeks, join me in saying that beautiful little prayer, Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. God bless you.